Welcome to the Holy Smokes Podcast, a show about faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink. I'm Steve Ryder in the Lion's Den, and I have the man with probably the best accent in all of Holy Smokes, Eric Dufour. It's Dufour, right?
Dufour, yes.
Yes. And dude, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thank you, Steve.
I've had you on the list for a while, and we've gone back and forth and trying to coordinate schedules, and I was like, all right, I gotta get a date set that works for Eric, so that way I can get a bunch done in a row. And so,
thank you for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
First question: what you smoking?
I'm smoking Vegas 5 AAA. First time, actually. It's quite a good cigar.
Yeah, it's one that was in my portable humidor.
It's one of yours, yeah?
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And then I have a Safari cigar. I'm getting low on these Joe Basil, so we're going to need some more of these for the guests. Just dropping that hint. So, people can tell you don't have an American accent.
I'm from Paris, Texas. That's why. No, I was born in France, in Burgundy, more precisely. Yeah.
Burgundy. Now, where is that in the country?
Burgundy is east of France. You might have heard about the wines that are produced there.
Yeah.
Kind of decent wines.
Decent wines.
Yeah, they're very good, actually.
Is there anywhere in France that doesn't make decent wines?
No, I don't know. It's kind of a tradition in France, yeah. It's a beautiful region, yeah.
What kind of home did you grow up in?
I grew up in a Catholic home, very Roman Catholic, French traditional background, so meaning we would go to Mass twice a year, usually for Easter and Christmas. So it was a very traditional French background, not very religious at all. So I had a knowledge of God, but I wasn't saved for sure. I was just a regular French kid.
Siblings? What'd your parents do?
Yeah, I had one sister who passed away when she was 15 and another sister who's 3 years older than me. My mom worked at a bank, and my dad, who's a World War II veteran, who's still alive, is 97. And so he worked at factories and different things.
Nice. And what sort of a kid were you growing up?
What sort of a kid was I? Well, I was a kid who was playing outside a lot, if you remember those times, when we could play outside forever. And I'd say quiet kid. Yeah, mostly.
So what did you do, like high school, college, young adult years?
Yeah, I went to college and studied diplomacy.
Really?
Yeah, really. And then that's when my life changed, when I was at the very end of studying diplomacy. That's pretty much when I had an encounter with God that radically changed my life.
Talk about that.
Okay, so it's a long story. You ready for that?
We need long stories.
So I always loved God.
Really?
Yeah. Since I was a little kid, as far as I can remember, I wanted to serve God, but I didn't know Him. I had a very small knowledge of God, and I would go to Mass, like I said, once in a while, but I always loved Jesus. And for some reason, I thought the day I die, if I know that I'm dying, my last thought has to be toward God. I want to think about Him. But that didn't go any further than that, so I had a normal life and did the same mistakes that most of the kids of my age would do.
Yeah.
And one day at school, so I went to public schools, because in France, if you remain in the public education system, it's free. From kindergarten to PhD if you want.
Oh,
so
really?
It's kind of unique, socialist kind of education anyways. So I was in high school when a teacher of economy, the first lesson we had with him, he told us that, which was against the law, still is, he spoke about Jesus. And I was like blown away. This guy is totally crazy. He could lose his job doing that. And he told us basically Jesus was not a religion, but a person you need to meet with. And I thought this guy either is totally crazy, which I thought he was, or he knows something that I don't. And because it happened that I was his best student, we started talking together. And he was not a believer, he still is an unbeliever. Believe it or not.
What?
Yes. I was brought to Christ by someone who is not a believer.
Wow.
Bear with me.
Yeah.
So he studied the Pentecostal denominations in France, and especially was writing a thesis on the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Trying to understand, because he was a sociologist, so trying to understand what was behind that, if people were making that up, or if it was really something from the divine. And so we talked, and he told me that him and his wife was about to get a divorce. They were not doing well together. And one day he said, why don't you come with me, to his wife, to this Pentecostal church, and I'm going to record the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the speaking in tongues, because he was trying to translate those speaking in tongues to understand what they were saying, if it was possible. And so that day she went with him and got saved. And but he did not, because he was very intellectual. And one night he invited me with some friends, had a dinner at his place, and with two of my best friends. And during the conversations over the dinner, his wife told me, Eric, you're not saved. I was furious against her. But she was my teacher's wife, so I couldn't say a word. And she made the dinner. I was at their house. So it was like an arrow that pierced my heart. And I was mad, but it never left me. And I began asking myself, am I saved or what? And I had no answer to that question. I didn't know if I was saved or not. And I had no way to know for sure, because when you're a Catholic, you believe the church takes care of that for you, but you don't have a personal, a conviction that you're saved. And it went like this for months. And she was always asking me, would you like to come to our church one Sunday morning, And I was like, nah, not really. But one day I was so tired of her inviting me that it was the Sunday of the Pentecost Sunday, I think, that I went, finally. And my motorbike had problems, couldn't start it. I mean, there was all kind of issues, but finally I was able to go there. And when I pushed the door, there was about maybe 60 people there. But I instantly knew that God was there. And I can't explain it. And I remember her eyes and her smile. But I knew immediately that I was a sinner. And I immediately knew that I didn't want to give up my sins. That was a lot.
You didn't want to?
I didn't want to. Mostly because I was fooling around with girls and stuff. And I was 17 and I was not interested into changing that.
Yeah.
And so for 5 years, I resisted God's calling. And she kept praying for me, praying. Till one day I was a student in Paris at university, studying diplomacy and international laws and stuff like that. And I was in my student bedroom in Paris, and suddenly I had a kind of a vision of a huge chasm and void under me. And I felt the Holy Spirit telling, I can tell you it's the Holy Spirit now. I didn't know by then. I had an idea, it might be. But he told me, this is the last time I'm calling you. And this is your destination if you don't surrender to me.
Wow.
So that day I was less stupid than the other days. And I finally said yes to God. So I had experiences before that, years before, like when I was maybe 14 years old, I found a little New Testament in my parents' bookshelves, and then I opened it and I found this verse that says, if you really believe with all your heart that what you're asking, God is going to give it to you, then you will see it happening. And I was like waiting for a friend to go on a bike ride. And I was like, I really don't want to see that friend, but okay, if this is true, I'm going to pray that this guy doesn't come and doesn't show up. And for no reason, he never showed up. And I got scared because I was like, someone heard me. And so it was like step by step, little hints, but I never made a decision for Christ till that evening when I was a student in Paris and alone in my bedroom by myself, and I finally surrendered my life to Christ.
How did that change you? And direction in your life, all that?
Radically.
How so?
I was a very good student, but I was always afraid of dying. I couldn't cross a street without thinking maybe if a car hits me, and if I die, I don't know where I'm going. I had everything. I was a successful student and many different things, but I wasn't sure about my eternal destiny. So that changed that radically. I stopped fooling around. I became a believer, and I dedicated my life to Christ like a month after. Like I was convinced that I wanted to serve Him, and I didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to commit my life to Him, 100%. And that changed me. My parents got scared. because they were Catholics.
Yeah.
And then they saw me, I quit on going to nightclubs and bars and stuff. I was quite radical right away. And then I was reading my Bible every day. And so they got scared. And they said, what's happening? Are you in a cult? Or because when you're in France, you have to understand, by then it's not true anymore. But by then, being a Christian without being Catholic was being in a cult. We even have a saying, you know, whenever food doesn't look right, we have a saying that is like, oh, don't touch it. It doesn't look Catholic. Meaning it might not be as good as it looks, or it might be bad for you, so don't touch it.
Yeah.
So anyways, my parents got scared, and they were like, we'd like you to resume, you know, going out with your friends and going, you know, nightclubs and stuff, which surprised me because they were Catholics and they were not supposed to say that to me. But yeah, my life changed then.
Did it change because you were studying diplomacy and international law?
Uh-huh.
Did you change that major?
No, I kept it till the very end of my studies. I thought that I would join UN. Actually, I applied to join UN.
Really?
Yep.
What was the draw of diplomacy, international law, etc.? What was the draw for you?
First, I wanted to serve my country and overseas and promote, you know, the ideals of human rights. And 'cause I thought France was a country of, and still is, a country of human rights. And I thought I could make a difference there. And I wanted to travel, see the world. So that was the draw, yeah.
So you have this deep love for your country. Here in America, we have this conception of France.
Careful what you're going to say.
That I mean, could be. I made a joke on Facebook, and you kind of called me on it a little bit. And
Did I?
yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And I was like, no. So talk about France, the country, how you know it, and what makes it so special. Because I've been there once, and I freaking loved it. I mean, I spent some time in Paris. Paris is a great city. But I went up to Normandy, and I fell in love. I went to Omaha Beach and the Normandy American Cemetery and saw all that. But the countryside was unbelievable. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with that area. I was like, I'd love to come up here and spend a month, get an Airbnb, and just spend some time here. Because this is just, it's cool.
I have to confess, it's a beautiful country. Many different sceneries and different kind of peoples. It's a mix of so many different kind of peoples from different nations. It's a beautiful place. You know about the food and the wine and the culture, and I love it. Any French person I know, we have a love-hate relationship with our country.
Really?
Oh yeah, we always criticize our own country, but we love it to death. You can't touch it if you're not French, or we're going to be all against you. But we spend our time criticizing our country all the time. It's a very secular country, meaning religion is not a topic that you speak on public places. It's private. You're not supposed to speak about it in public places, and it's not well received. Like I said, I was raised Catholic, but we didn't go to mass. We didn't go to church, so somehow it doesn't really make sense. But that's how most of the people were by then. Islam is the second religion in France. It's about almost 10% of the French people now, so it's very strong. And evangelical churches were unheard of. They always existed especially since the 1920s, that began to grow in France, but it was very secretive. Not many people knew about those. That's why most of the time, if you were in an evangelical church, then people thought you belonged to a cult. So it was not understood at all.
Yeah.
And everybody speaks about politics, food, and sex, pretty much. Let's be honest.
So you finish school. You have a plan to go to. You want to work for the UN, work for your government, your country.
So I switched from government to UN because I realized, as I studied diplomacy, that a diplomat is a professional liar. You have to lie to promote your government's official point of view, even if you know that it's not the truth. So that's what you're paid for. You're promoting and your government's point of view abroad. And so becoming a believer, I realized I'm not going to be able to do that. I don't want to lie, even if it's for my government. So that's when I switched and I thought, okay, let's work for an organization that won't defend or promote the voice of a government, but that will be more interested into humankind and human beings and protecting humankind, etc. So I was supposed to join the either UN and the HCR. I mean, it's an organization in UN taking care of refugees around the world. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to do. And something happened.
What happened?
In the meantime, I had met my future wife, so we were still not married yet. We were just fiancés together and engaged, if you want. That's the way we say engaged in French, fiancé. You know the word.
Yeah.
And so the very week I was supposed to go for my final interview and get the job, God talked to us. And he said, you asked me to show you how you could serve me. So here's the deal. Long story short, I'm going to go back a little bit in time. Mm-hmm. Paris in the month of August is closed. There's nothing open. And my wife is from a Huguenot background. I mean, there have been Christians in her family forever. She had a grandpa who was a first missionary for the French Assemblies of God in what is now the Burkina Faso. Mm-hmm. And her dad is a pastor. Actually, her dad is the pastor who baptized me.
Wow.
He didn't know that I would become his son-in-law. He would have kept me longer underwater the day he baptized me. No, I love him. But anyways, I was not doing anything in Paris in August. So I asked her, why don't you find me a job where you live, close to your parents' house? And then
where was she at?
She was in Alsace, eastern part of France, further east compared to Burgundy. And so I went there. And for a month, I helped her grandpa, who ran by then a rehab center for drug addicts and abused women and convicts. And so I had my truck driving license and bus driving license that I had a chance to take when I was in the French Navy for a year. So I stayed there for a month, and I was helping those drug addicts. And that's when God talked to us at the end of the month of August, telling us, here's what I'd like you to do. Why don't you work here for me instead of going to UN? Yeah. That was not the same career.
Yeah.
And I had no qualification whatsoever to work with drug addicts. I had never touched drug in my life, so I was unqualified.
All your clubbing, you never did? Mm-mm. Interesting. Okay.
I did other things, but not that one.
Yeah.
And we realized that it was God asking us, if you really are serious about serving me, that's what I'm offering to you. Give up your diplomatic career and follow me. Mm-hmm. My parents are not believers, and they paid for my studies, meaning they paid for my student room and things like that. So I knew it would be excruciating for them to hear me say, because they dreamed about me becoming a diplomat, and then telling them that I would stop this career and switch to become a counselor for drug addicts and a lumberjack, because we were doing lumberjack work in forest to help those guys, and truck driver. That was not the dream they had for their son, because I was the only son. So
how'd that go over when you told them?
That didn't go very well. Uh-huh. The day I got saved, and when I told them that I would be baptized, that they thought, "Oh, you're changing religion." And they were really not happy about it at all. Yeah. Because like I said, you couldn't be a Christian without being a Catholic. So it was tense between my parents and I for a while, but finally they accepted it. And so when on the top of that, I told them, I'm not going to join UN anymore. That was rough. And I understood it. I mean, my heart was broken for them. But I knew that it was God's desire for us. So we said yes. And the same week that I was supposed to go to Paris to join UN, in fact, I joined this rehab center for drug addicts, and I became a counselor and, like I said, a lumberjack and a truck driver for God. Not exactly the same career.
Yeah. And how did that go? Any stories that really kind of stick out?
Yeah, it went well. Actually, I really became passionate about it.
Really?
Because I saw many young guys that I could have been the same. I remember one who saw his mom being killed in front of his eyes, when he was 10 years old by one of her lovers, and then he became a drug addict. And I thought, if the same thing would have happened to me, where would I be today? Maybe I would be at the exact same place, Yeah. So I thought life really protected me so far.
Yeah.
And those guys didn't have a chance. And so it became really a passion to take care of those guys. And we lost some from AIDS and from overdose. And I mean, that was a rough time, but an amazing time.
What year did you finish school?
I finished school in 1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I had to serve in the Navy for 1 year, then resume school, and then,
You had to serve in the Navy.
Yes.
Was that like a compulsory thing, kind of
Yes,
like Israel?
Yes, exactly. For a year, every man
Really?
had to serve for 1 year. And so, I was selected to go to the Navy. I was a French teacher. Never set foot on a single ship, for a year. But it was a great year. I had fun.
Nice. And how long were you working with those addicts?
For 5 years, and I became the director of the structure at the end. And at the same time, we got married in the meantime.
Yeah.
And we planted a church there. And I was called to become a pastor. So it was a lot altogether.
Yeah.
And we had our first children there.
Yeah.
But for 5 years, we did that full time, my wife and I. And it was amazing. My first sons were raised on the shoulders of gang leaders and drug addicts and convicts. And we were protected. We lived on site with them. No one would have ever touched my wife. They would have been killed. I mean, there was laws between them, You don't touch those who help you.
Wow.
So that was kind of amazing time.
Wow.
Yeah. Like a teen challenge center, if you want.
Yeah. That's awesome. And starting the church, where did that come from?
So the Teen Challenge Center, let's call it that way, belonged to my wife's grandfather, and he was pastor in the French Assemblies of God. And her dad was also a pastor in the French Assemblies of God. And so we planted a French Assembly of God there. There was a village or little town without a church, so that's when we decided to plant a church there. And
What area of the country were you?
Alsace, still eastern part of France that speak German dialect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how long were you the pastor of that church?
For 5 years. And we discovered different communities. There are Mennonites there.
Yeah.
And they offered us to rent their church when they were not using it. So we began a partnership with Mennonites, which opened my mind to the body of Christ being very diverse and
That's beautiful.
much bigger than just the Assemblies of God.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any better. I mean, I was freshly coming from Catholicism, so I had everything to learn. I didn't know about the different denominations among the body of Christ. I had no clue of, what they meant and anything.
And what were those years like being a pastor?
They were great years. A lot of work indeed, but they were exciting years. Planning a church is a lot of work, especially in France. So you're met with a lot of resistance. People, like I said, they look at you like you're a guru from a cult, and you're trying to sell them something that is wrong. You want to remove them from Catholicism, which is not the idea indeed. So they're very suspicious about you and who you are and your activities, etc. But it was nevertheless very exciting.
And then what happened after that 5 years?
So after those 5 years, so we had already 3 sons there.
Yeah.
And so our denomination told us, if you really want to be a full-time pastor, you're going to have to do that 100% of your time. So we moved to a different region. You might have heard about it. It's called Champagne. You might have heard about it.
I might have heard of it.
And so we took care of a small countryside church of 40 people. But we were full-time pastors, which meant by then having a really, really small salaries, like $600 a month. And so that was really something, but exciting too. And so we had the joy to see the church growing. And after a year, we were asked to pastor a bigger church. And so we said yes, but we kept pastoring the small one. So we were actually pastoring 2 churches at the same time, about 60 miles apart from each other, 70 miles apart.
Yeah.
And we did that for 3 full years, had 2 more sons. So we had our full quiver,
Yeah.
5 sons. And that's when another big change took place.
Which was?
Which was a Tuesday night at a prayer meeting. We were praying for missions and the rest of the world and countries, etc. And I was praying in my heart, and no one could hear me. And I was praying for Africa and Asia and Southeast Asia. And by then there was no missionary from the French Ages to the former French Indochina countries, especially Laos. We had one in Vietnam, one in Cambodia, but there was no one in Laos. So full of faith, in my prayer, I told God, why don't you send someone to Laos? You know that was a mistake, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because God heard me, and He right away told me in my heart, and what about you?
Yeah.
And I told God, no. We were two pastors. There was an evangelist, and I was the shepherd. So I told God, no. I've just got here 3 years ago. People need me. 2 churches. I can't leave. It's not for me. And God stopped there. But I went back home, and it was still very strong in my heart. And I went to Rachel, my wife, and I asked her, did you receive anything from God? She said, no. I said, perfect. It's great. Don't change anything.
Don't ask any questions.
Don't ask any question. You know, everything's fine. Don't worry. And then the following Sunday, which is really amazing, the head of our mission department was visiting our church to talk to my other colleague, the evangelist one. He was doing crusades all around the globe. So they had a meeting together, not with me. And now you're going to have to bear with me because what I'm about to say is kind of crazy.
Okay.
But he was preaching, this head of mission was preaching, and he speaks fluent Spanish, so and he was a missionary to Africa, so he's more interested toward African countries and Spanish-speaking countries, South America, Central America, etc. But then 2 times in his sermon, he said, we have no one in Laos.
Oh.
Out of the blue, no one knew, and that's the bizarre part. Rachel was sitting in the church. I was on the stage behind the pastor because he was about to be done with his sermon. And so I was about to take the mic after him. And suddenly on the left wall for me of the church, I saw 4 letters on fire appearing like a vision.
Yeah.
And it was Laos, which is Laos.
Yeah.
And I looked at Rachel, and she was sitting in front of me. And I knew in my spirit that she had the same vision.
Really?
And as a matter of fact, that was the truth.
Wow.
So, but we didn't say yes.
Really?
No, because when we talked together about it, we said, God, you might have forgotten one piece. You know, we have 5 babies. They were between 5 by then and just born.
So you guys were pumping them out pretty quick.
Yes, that was our choice. And so we were like, no, Laos had no good hospitals by then. I mean, it was the poorest country in Asia. And we were like, no, it's not for us. You forgot about our kids. And maybe a couple of weeks afterwards, I was closing the church on a Sunday morning. Rachel was already driving back home with the kids. And my oldest son, who was almost 6 by then, he talked to my wife and said, Mom, my brothers and I, he couldn't even say brothers correctly. There was a funny word in French. Yeah. He said, we need to talk to Dad and you because we want to say something. And she was like, what do you want to tell us? And he said, my brothers and I, we talked together and we want to go to another country, speak about Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And so we cried a lot because we didn't have faith and we thought God forgot about our kids. But he told us, what do you think? Do you think I'm not preparing them too? Wow. And so finally we said yes.
Dude.
Yeah, then we surrendered to God's will. It was madness. I had no idea how it could be done. But it was like a year after we were gone. We were going to Laos.
So you had no idea how it could be done, but how was it done? Like what fell into place for it to happen?
A series of miracles. Like I met with the mission department. They told me there's no way we can send you to Laos. We don't have the money. Yeah. We don't have the means. We don't know anyone there. So keep praying. So I kept praying. And then I met a pastor who was from Finland. And he told me, I know the Finnish mission department of the Finnish Assemblies of God. I can take you there and talk to them about mission in Laos. So I went to Helsinki, met with the Finnish missions there, and that's how I had my first contacts with people working in Southeast Asia. And then the mission department told me, you know what? We don't have the money, we don't know how, but we believe your calling comes from God. You can go. But make it happen. We don't know how, so you're going to have to do it by yourself, but do something about it. And so in December 99, my wife and I went to Laos for the first time, met with the Finnish missionaries there. Couldn't call them missionaries, it's a communist regime, second most difficult after North Korea.
Really?
So by then it was. Met with the American Assemblies of God missionaries there and realized that we would likely work more with the American maybe. And so we came back to France and said, that's it, we found a way. We're going to try to develop partnership with the American Assemblies of God there. And in December 2000, we were leaving for good with our 5 sons. We had someone to replace us at the church. We had found another pastor who was willing to take our job, our position. And that's it, we were gone. In 1 year, which still amazes me.
So 1999.
1999 was our first trip to Laos, and year 2000, we moved the whole family. With babies. Yeah.
And how long were you guys there?
8 years.
Now, you were working with the Americans. I assume then you knew English?
Absolutely not. I learned like any French student, we learned British English at school. But no, we honestly, we didn't know really good English. So, and those missionaries were from Florida and Alabama.
Yeah.
So their English was quite remote from British English. They had a strong accent. You said I have an accent, but they do too. Sometimes I was wondering, is it English or is it something else? And so we learned English with them, actually.
Really?
And Lao language, which is the national language, yeah.
How old were you at the time?
Oh gosh, I was in my 30s, early 30s. Yeah.
How difficult was that to learn 2 languages in your 30s?
Very difficult, yeah. Especially Lao, which is a tonal language.
Really?
Yeah, and the government by then didn't want foreigners to learn the language. It was forbidden for foreigners. There was no language school. So you had to learn at the market, you had to learn, the way you could. And but they would not teach you the alphabet, they would not teach you the grammar rules, they would not teach you anything. Because it was forbidden. They didn't want Westerners to corrupt the people of Laos with capitalism and new ideas. So that was kind of tough to learn. By then, it's a lot better now.
Yeah. And what were those years like?
They were fantastic years and extremely difficult years.
And specifically, what were you doing? Were you working specifically for an objective or with a certain people group?
Yep.
Or?
So interestingly enough, because I had degrees in diplomacy, that's how I was allowed to have a work visa in Laos.
Really?
Yeah, because I could work with development agencies, and the organization we worked with was a development agency. So we specifically brought development to remote villages in the rainforest and very remote places of northern Laos. We worked with hill tribe people like Hmongs or Kamu and different tribes, bringing purified waters, water filters, and holistic development. And it was really an amazing time. Very, very difficult at the same time, because from pastoring 2 churches, preaching 5 times a week, having hundreds of meetings a week, I'm a little bit pushing it, but it was a lot. Suddenly, I was no one. I couldn't speak the language like a 5 years old. No one needed me, and I didn't have a church anymore. So it was like leaving a train at full speed and hitting a wall. And after a couple of years, I fell into a depression.
Really?
And developed a cancer because of it.
What kind of cancer?
So yeah, it was, but it was part of the story.
Yeah.
And I became mad at God for what I thought was lying to me. So my brain knew that God doesn't lie and God loves us and has a perfect will for our lives.
But you felt like...
My guts were telling me, I'm wasting my life, I'm wasting my ministry. No one is interested into what I have to say or anything.
Yeah.
And so I was really struggling in my faith. And so with this cancer, I was 37 years old when I got the cancer.
What kind of cancer?
Testicular cancer.
Oh.
Chernobyl, likely, because in France we had the Chernobyl cloud, and likely it was a consequence of it.
Yeah.
But anyways,
really?
For several months, I was out. I had surgery, radiotherapy, etc. And I thought, well, I have a medal on my chest. I was wounded at the battlefield. I'll be back to France pastoring churches.
You were wounded in the battlefield?
Meaning I served God,
Okay.
went overseas, went
Got
on the
it.
mission field, obeyed God. But
Okay.
as a result, I got a cancer.
Metaphorically. Yeah.
That was my wound.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, this is my exit door. I have
Yeah.
all the good reasons to go back to France. And God told me, nope, you're not going back to France. You're not done. So you stay there. I felt trapped by God because leaving Laos would have been disobeying God, and I didn't want to disobey my God. And at the same time, staying there was like staying in a jail. So it was rough.
What pulled you out? What snapped you out of that depression and out of that self-pity?
It's a good question. It took me a couple of years because after the cancer, I had a meningitis. Because
goodness.
that was a long season of battling against death and threats from the enemy. And so I went to a conference actually in Quebec. So my wife thought I needed it, and I think she was right.
Yeah.
At the beginning, people were praying for me, and afterwards they were praying for her because it was not pretty. You know, when a guy is sick for so long, I was not a pleasant person to be around. And so that's at this conference that God touched my heart, and it was the beginning of me getting better. And I realized this was all part of His plan for my life, as bizarre as it sounds. I had never been sick before, or nothing serious. So I had to go through that to have compassion for those who are going through those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I came back, and in fact, this very season birthed the ministry that we developed with my wife since.
Which is?
Which is, when we asked for help, we were doing so bad. I asked my organization to help us. And they told us, you know, you're pastors and missionaries. And they said, I quote, you're superheroes, pray more. There's nothing we can do for you. And Rachel and I were like, pray more? I mean, I'm mad at God, so how can I pray more? And one day in my bedroom, God told me, He gave me the verse when Jesus is on the cross, and He says, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Yes.
The only place where Jesus doesn't speak to His God talking about His Father. He doesn't use the term Father, but He says God.
Yeah.
And through that verse, He told me, don't you know that I know you're mad at me? And He said, you can tell me, you can speak to me about it. And it set me free. And I began sharing my bitterness, anger to God, and it healed me because He's my dad. So He was okay with me telling Him all the problems I had in my faith and my relationship with Him.
How important do you think it is for people that are in the thick of depression, problems in their life, etc., with that weight? How important is it for them to have that freedom to be able to just yell at God and just get it out?
It's crucial. My religion did not allow me to do that, but my God said it's okay. And so it's crucial that you have to know that God is your dad. When my sons were not pleased with me, when I would say it's time to go to bed and stop playing, maybe they would pout, or be mad at me, but I knew the long-term best interest for them. Mm-hmm. And God is the same. He knows when we're stuck, and sometimes He doesn't answer our prayers, or He answers in a way that we were not expecting. I didn't go on a mission field to spend months in a hospital and surgeries and thinking that my kids will grow without a dad. You know, those were tough seasons.
Yeah.
But it changed me deeply, and it made me a different person.
Yeah.
I did not realize it. I thought it was all a waste. But people who knew me before said, Eric, you have changed. You're much deeper than you've ever been.
Really?
And that's how I began to realize, no, God was really doing something through this cancer and everything. It was not a punishment. It was not a consequence of disobedience. It was just His will. I don't wish cancer to anyone, but I don't regret it for a second. I don't wish to go back through that again, indeed.
Yeah.
But I had to go through that. It was part of His design for me and for us.
So what was next then?
So we stayed in Laos more years, kept doing development and underground pastoral training that I can't really speak about even today. but we were doing pastoral training with the underground church, the persecuted church. And so we became country coordinators and regional directors. And we saw many more missionary couples and singles struggling with all kinds of issues. And we realized that it's not because you're a pastor or a missionary that you don't struggle with sex addictions or any kind of other things, and depression, like it was my case. But they have no one to go to because everybody thinks they are superheroes of faith. So they can't turn to anyone because they're supposed to be strong all the time. Mm-hmm. And so one time, a couple came to us, missionary couple, and they said, if you can't help us, we're going to get a divorce. Mm-hmm. It was worse than that, but that's pretty much what they said. And they had 4 kids, young kids. Oh, man. And we tried to help them, and we told God, this is unfair. You know James Bauer, 24, the series?
Yeah.
When James Bauer is in front of a bomb, and he has to defuse the bomb in 10 seconds, and there's a blue wire and the red wire. One's going to explode, the other one's going to defuse the bomb. And he doesn't know which one, so it's like, pick one. That we thought we were doing that. We didn't know what we were doing with them. And we were like, maybe we're going to do something wrong and it's going to hurt them and they're going to get a divorce. Or maybe we're going to heal them and we have no clue. Being a pastor was not enough. We didn't know how to help them. We did our best. They're still together today, so wow. Praise God for that, because we had no clue. And we cried out to God and said, suddenly a burden came and we realized those people have no help because they're supposed to help the others, so they're not supposed to have problems. And we said, God, we need to be trained. We feel it's something you're putting on our heart, but we don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And long story short, once in a secret meeting, we met another American couple. They were in Asia for a few days. And in the morning, I was preaching, and I was sharing, I'm a pastor without a flock, because I'm a shepherd at heart, but I had no flock to pastor. And because we had some international gatherings, but it was secretive in people's houses and sometimes in a public place, but it was very rare. So anyways, and I had no flock. And the same day, the afternoon, this American pastor speaks and he said, I'm a shepherd of shepherds. And when he said those words, in the morning, God told me, I'm going to show you your new flock. I didn't know what it meant. And so the same afternoon, this guy says those words, and the Holy Spirit comes back to me and says, this is the man I want you to meet with. This is what you're going to do. Go and talk to him. And I told Rachel, I want to talk to this pastor. And she said no, because only the people in crisis were, talking to him. And she was like, I don't want people to believe we are in crisis. We were, because I was still not really doing strong. But so we finally went. And he told us, if you're really serious about that, why don't you come and spend a week with my wife and I? You're going to go through an intensive with us, intensive week of counseling. And if you're serious about it, we'll see what happens. And if you really are called to do that. And so we went. Yeah. It was in Canada by then. The retreat center was there. Spent a week with them and realized, yes, that is what God is calling us to do. And they agreed. And they said, if you're serious, we are willing to train you. We live in Colorado, so you would have to come to Colorado. We had no money, 5 almost preteens and almost teenagers. And we still had 1 more year to go, in order to find one more time someone to replace me in the organization, etc., etc. We talked to our sending agency, and they said, there is no need for your new vision. Everybody's fine. There is no need for that. So if you choose that, you'll be on your own. Yes.
What?
Yeah. It was a long time ago, but yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's what they told us.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Probably what, 2005?
It was in 2007 when it
2007.
Went. Yeah.
We don't have a need for people to
help pastors and missionaries.
Exactly. What?
We didn't realize the extent of it, but we touched a huge taboo among pastors and missionaries that we can be in need of help too. And so, funny enough, I was supposed to become the next head of the mission agency, and one more time, God put us in front of a choice. He said, you can go and become the head of this mission agency, and you have a salary, you have everything, or you can follow what I put on your heart and jump.
Yeah.
And so if you remember, it was in year 2008, a difficult year for the States, if you remember.
It was a difficult year around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But especially here. And so we went to the US Embassy in Laos, applied for a visa, and the lawyers, attorneys here were telling us, in the States, were telling us, there is no visa right now because it's such a crisis. It's going to take at least a year. And I was like, it can't take a year because my sending agencies say that they were done with us pretty much because of our new vision. So they were done with us. They were not interested anymore. So the bridge was burned behind us already. So we went to the embassy, and believe me or not, we asked for a 2-year visa. And so we were told it would take about a year. We had our visas in 2 hours.
What?
And they gave us a 5-year visa.
What?
Yeah.
It's going to take a year, 2 hours later. Here's your 5-year visa.
So
Here's more than what you asked for.
Yeah, they said, give us your French passport, come back tomorrow, you'll have it. So
Wow.
it was the first miracle of a series of miracles that took us here. Someone rented a house that today we still don't know who it was. For 2 years for us, it was paid. People bought furniture. Someone offered a Suburban to us because we had 5 kids. 5 kids with all of them wanted to go to university. We didn't have the first dollar because we were like on our own.
Yeah.
And God has been faithful beyond imagination. Beyond imagination. The things you read in books really happened to us. And it was not because of our faith. I was so scared. The sleepless nights that I spent here in Colorado because I was like, I've destroyed my kids' lives. I'm never going to be able to pay for university here. It's so expensive. I have no real income. I mean, but God provided.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
So you ended up settling in Denver then?
Aurora first.
Yeah.
And so we joined this ministry called Shepherd's Heart Ministry with Pastor Larry and Laurie Russell. They trained us for 2 years. We worked for them for a total of 7 years together. And then 5 years ago, we created our own ministry. So, which is serving alongside ministry. And so when there is no COVID, we usually travel about 6 months a year doing preventative work and crisis-oriented work with pastors and missionaries.
We've touched on this in a few episodes in the past about the importance of ministering to the pastors, to the leaders in the church, to missionaries, etc. Reinforce that. Talk more about that because it's something that my heart was really moved during my time that I worked at Focus on the Family because I worked on a tape series called Pastor to Pastor with H.B. London.
I know that, yes.
and I would hear these stories and it would just break my heart over these pastors and what they would go through. Yeah. Not only in their personal life, but also being attacked from elders and deacons and members of the church and getting fired for no cause and the way people would just turn on them at the drop of a hat.
What convicted us was like the destruction is so huge because when a pastor goes down for any kind of reason, it's not just one man who goes down. It's the whole family. It's his marriage. It's his kids. Suddenly, no one talks to them anymore. Suddenly, they can't go to that church they used to go every day. And the kids, they grew up with many people, but suddenly, no one can talk to them because they are the pastor's sons and daughters. So they're totally rejected and banned and sacked from the church. So the destruction is huge. It's not just one person. It's the whole family. And then talk about the ripple effects on the Christians themselves. And like you said, it's not always because there is a moral failure. It could be for any given reason, sometimes wrong reasons. And we've seen that with the missionaries too. Sending agencies not really paying attention to their own missionaries, not checking on them. We've seen missionaries abandoned, literally in a country where there was no one else they could talk to. And I even remember a single lady missionary ended up marrying a Muslim guy as a second wife because she was so suffering from loneliness and no one visiting her ever. And those things should never happen. So those were our motivations. We thought, no, never again should those things happen. And so we want to provide help that it won't go that far. And if anyone needs help it could be done in a secretive way, it could be done in a confidential way, then people will be able to stay where God wants them to be and complete their work, complete their mission, and complete God's work there.
What sorts of services and help do you and your wife provide?
Two different kinds. The first one is the preventative kind. So we give conferences all around the world, especially for mission organizations and denominations or groups of churches or international churches. And we teach on how to protect your marriage when you serve, how to protect your family as you serve, how to protect teams. There are so many, 70% of missionaries leaving the mission field before the time is right, leave not because of the locals, but because of the other missionaries and the conflicts they have among the teams. So we teach a lot about how to resolve conflicts and how to build healthy teams. So that's our first work. And then we do all kind of counseling sessions online, indeed, but also we have what we call an intensive week. That was the model developed by Larry and Roy Russell. Other ministries developed it too, but it's very efficient. We take one couple at a time. We don't do group sessions.
Yeah.
And for 5 days, we're going to go very deep into their issues. And we see tremendous results. And we see people who are about to divorce or people who had affairs and being restored by the Holy Spirit in a very deep way. And they're still together now and still serving God, which is the end goal. We want to finish the race together.
If people want to learn more or they want to support, how do they?
Well, they can go on a website.
Which is?
And racheldufour.com. And so they can have it's French and English. Guess why? And they can have all kind of resources. And my wife wrote a book about female sexuality, which I recommend even for guys. It's called Hooray for the Vajayjay. Because we realize sexuality is a big taboo in the Christian world, which should not be the case, because God created sexual intimacy. And so we've been robbed by the devil about the fact that we could speak freely about it. And so many marriages have been destroyed because of sexual issues. And so we realize we need to talk more about it. So that's what we do. So we're more and more invited by churches and denominations to speak to pastors about sexuality, sexual intimacy, and things like that.
That's wonderful. Eric and RachelDufour.com.
Yes.
And we will have a link in the show notes. So that way, if anyone wants to come alongside you guys and help, support, or even just pray.
Pray is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a prayer team. Whenever we have one of those weeks, of intensive weeks, we have a prayer team that is strong of about 1,000 people praying for those couples. They don't know where they're from. They don't know what they do. They don't know who they are. They'll never know. But they know that we have a couple, and then they pray for these couples, and we see miracles taking place because of those.
That's cool.
People praying behind us.
How has COVID affected the ministry?
Very badly.
Really?
It's been a tremendously difficult year for many pastors and small-sized churches. They can't gather anymore. It's been very hard in Europe especially, but here in the States too. And so many pastors have lost their congregations, or they can't preach anymore. They can't gather the congregations. So it's been really, really rough on many of them. Missionaries too. I mean, some have left their country of service because they couldn't stay because of the COVID. And so they are stuck in a different place. And the people they used to take care of, they can't take care of them anymore. So it's very hard on them.
Eric Dufour, thanks
Yes.
for being on the Holy Smokes podcast. Let's get to rapid fire questions.
Oh.
Hey everyone, before we get to the rapid fire segment, I wanted to reshare a note that Kay and I got from an 80-year-old listener that lives in Southeast Kansas and still works in his small town family business. He told us, I really lack male friendships because so many of my friends have passed the last few years, so I would value a group of men to spend time with. I'm learning some valuable lessons through the podcast and wish I was 30 rather than 80. I plan to stay tuned for more interviews. May God bless you and your group in 2020. He also talked about how he wrestled with the concept of men and women partaking in fine tobacco and drink because of the church and denomination he grew up in, but the podcast is changing that. When I showed this to Kay at his house recently, we both started tearing up. This is my why for doing this show. So if that moved you, would you consider partnering with us? Kay and I want to develop the website to better facilitate groups. We want to travel and get your stories for the podcast. We want to get back to doing 2 episodes a week, but we need your help. There are 2 simple ways you can help us out. Become a regular supporter at patreon.com/holysmokes. That's patreon.com. For as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to episodes, ad-free versions of the podcast, free swag like a Holy Smokes t-shirt, and more. That's patreon.com/holysmokes. You can also make a one-time tax-deductible donation at paypal.me/holysmokesclub, and both of those links are in the show notes. Thanks.
Rapid fire. Fire. Here.
So when did you first try cigars or pipe?
I used to smoke pipes when I was a teenager.
Really?
Because I thought it was cool. And
It is cool.
It is cool in many ways. But when you become a believer, at least in France, you're not supposed to smoke anymore. And smoking could become an addiction indeed. So I asked God to set me free from that because I was making my own cigarettes and stuff.
Yes.
And he did. So I was delivered from tobacco when I was like in my 20s, early 20s, when I got saved at 21. And I never touched a cigarette or any tobacco since, till 7 years ago. Through a friend of mine, Eric Sellerier, another French guy,
yes,
who was doing a sabbatical in Colorado. And we are very good friends. And he told me, I've met a guy named Kay. And this guy's crazy. He smokes cigars.
I've heard about him. I've heard about this guy named Kay.
Yeah, you heard about him?
Yeah, I've heard
I'm
about
glad.
him.
He's a great guy to get to know. And he said he smokes cigars and he called his group Holy Smokes. Can you believe that? He said, would you like to join me? Because he didn't want to go alone, you know. And so I said, yeah, but I'm not smoking, so I can't smoke a cigar. But I said, I'm willing to go with you. And so we went, and I met with a great group of guys. But I was like, but I'm not going to smoke a cigar because I was delivered by God from it. So, but then it was God arm wrestled with me for months about the fact that he wanted me to join that group. And I was like, but you delivered me from tobacco, so it doesn't make any sense. And step by step, I began. Eric and I would usually share one cigar together, a Connecticut, usually a very light one, you know.
Yeah.
And we would smoke half of it each. And then I got not addicted, but used to smoke cigars. And began enjoying it, actually.
Yeah.
And I met with my best group of guys ever. I can say that honestly, not because I'm speaking in front of you, but it's true. And I met the most spiritual group ever. And one day someone said, if you have a glass of scotch in one hand and a cigar in the other hand, you can be sure you don't have any extremist Christian around you, so you're among good people and not religious people, but people having a relationship with Christ. And that's what I discovered. And in those times when it was still difficult being in the States, raising funds and, the missionary life, very often I found brothers who were there to pray with me and offered support through their friendship and prayers. And it's been my best group of guys ever since.
That's wonderful. What do you prefer, cigars or pipe?
So cigars, yeah.
What's your favorite cigar?
My favorite cigar would be Late Hour Churchill. It's a Davidoff.
Ooh.
Churchill Late Hour. It's for some reason I love Churchill first.
Yeah.
Not the size of the cigar, but the person.
Yes.
The historical person. And this is a great cigar. It's a bit on the expensive side, but it's worth it.
What's your best dollar for dollar cigar?
I love Isla del Sol cigar. It's Drew Estate cigar, I think.
Yeah.
And with the tip is sweet. I love that. It's Good tobacco, not an expensive one. It could be my everyday cigar.
Where's your go-to place to get your smokes?
Smoker Friendly or Cigar International online.
If you were celebrating, what's your splurge cigar?
I would take a Hibiki. Cohiba.
What's your favorite liquid pairing with your smoke?
Or definitely could be a Lagavulin 16 years old or Arberg Scotch. I really love Scotch, so yeah.
Nice. Who's the most interesting person you've ever met through cigars?
Paul Philidis.
Paul.
He's the one who welcomed me maybe at the beginning, like between Europeans,
Yeah.
It's just what, I mean, it's unfair to the others because definitely there's more than just Paul. But Paul was the one who made me feel welcome beyond imagination.
He gives the best hugs.
And best hugs ever on earth. If you don't feel good, just go to Paul. He's going to make you feel good.
What's the best place you've ever smoked? Like your most memorable, like this is just, this is amazing.
Yeah, on an island.
Ooh, I like it already.
Yeah, on an island, on the seashore with a 30 years old rum from Madagascar in the Indian Ocean.
Even better.
The best rum I ever had in my life. Maybe the best alcohol, period.
Yeah.
And Bihiki with Eric Sellerier together. That was an amazing cigar and amazing drink.
Growing up in Wisconsin, I always had this fascination with the Pacific Ocean. My first time there, it was magical.
Yeah.
And then just over a year ago, 13 years ago, we spent 3 weeks in Western Australia and we finished it with an Airbnb right on the Indian Ocean. And I was like, I want to spend more time along here because this is magical.
There's many magical islands in the Indian Ocean.
Oh my gosh.
Mauritius, I would recommend.
Mauritius?
Mauritius Island, yes.
Ooh.
That's where I was that time.
All right. Are you into Marvel or DC?
Both, but my favorite superhero is Green Lantern, so I'd say DC.
Green Lantern. He was my favorite as a kid. What drew you to Green Lantern?
Oh, that's a long story. We still have time or what?
Yes, absolutely we have time.
Okay, I preach on Green Lantern. I have a message on Green Lantern, believe it or not. All superheroes have superpowers. You can't really relate to them. Green Lantern's different because he received his superpowers from above, and he has to pledge to
recharge.
Yeah, but before recharging, he has to use his powers only to serve the people in need, and like the widows and orphans, etc.
Yeah.
He can't use his powers to do anything else. And as he's using them, he has to recharge because he's losing his powers. And whenever he recharges his ring with the lantern, he has to recommit himself to this pledge that he's going to serve, etc. I never abuse his powers. And in many ways, to me, it's like a symbol of Christianity. We receive powers through the Holy Spirit. It's not because of us, it's because of Him. And we're not supposed to use it for our own good, but to serve. And we have to go back to Christ every day to recharge. So that's why I love Green Lantern. And he's not alone. They're a team of Green Lanterns.
Yeah, absolutely.
He can't solve issues by himself. He needs a team around him.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Both again. Okay. I grew up on the old Star Trek, but I remember in December 1977 going to my first Star Wars, and I didn't stop since. So yeah, I love both.
Favorite food?
Asian and French.
Ooh, what's your favorite French dish?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. But definitely I'm from Burgundy, so escargots.
Ooh, I've never had escargot.
Oh, that's a shame. You should.
Well, what I think I hear is that you and your wife should make me some.
Yes.
And bring the boys and I up. And
yeah, that's something we could do. Yes.
Oh, all right. I'll try. Let's put that on the calendar.
With a good red Burgundy, indeed.
Ooh, all right.
You bring the red Burgundy, I bring the escargots.
Deal. Deal. All right, let's get that on the calendar. Dogs, cats, neither, or both?
Both. I had dogs, I had cats. I don't have any right now because it's not easy to travel the world with animals. But we had both. I love both.
Did you have a nickname growing up?
Kiki, I hated it.
Kiki. What is that?
Doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
My parents called me that.
What's one unusual fact that few people know about you?
Yeah, okay. I love hard rock.
Really?
Oh, yeah, really,
Like what?
really.
Like what? What bands?
Scorpions.
Ooh.
I grew up on that. I still love it. I listen to it in my car. My wife knows about it. That's my secret sin.
I wouldn't say it's a sin. That's some good music from the 80s. If you were stranded on a desert island with only one movie, what would it be?
Interstellar.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Thank you.
With Matthew McConaughey, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, I
That's
love
a
it.
really good movie.
Yes.
The science behind it. And
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You a reader? I assume you're a reader.
Yes.
What are your favorite 1 to 3 books not titled the Holy Bible?
I just finished a huge biography of Winston Churchill.
Ooh.
Took me a couple of years to read it. I absolutely loved it. I love Churchill. I'm passionate about his life and the things he's done. And so I love biographies, and I'm not very strong on novels or things like that. I prefer
Same.
historical books.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Are you an early riser, a night owl, or more normal?
I'm an early riser, 4 a.m. every day.
Wow.
It's because of Laos, because at 4 a.m., we used to live in the former royal capital of Laos, Luang Prabang, and at 4 a.m. and 4 p.m., the whole city, in every Buddhist temple, they're going to hit the gongs
Yeah.
for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so at 4 a.m., so
Yeah.
I was like, before they worship the spirits, I'm going to pray to God before they do.
Yeah.
So that's how it started.
If you could live anywhere, where would that be?
That's difficult because part of me is French, part of me is American, part of me is Asian. And honestly, I feel home in Laos, and I feel home here in the States and back in France. So a bit of those three places. Yeah.
What's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness?
Compassion, maybe a strength, is a strength. And a weakness is I tend to let people trample me. And maybe because of too much compassion sometimes.
Yeah.
I pay the price for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's been the greatest influence in your life?
My wife's grandfather, the
Really?
missionary.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Talk about him.
He was a man of an incredible faith.
Really?
Was in the Second World War, was a prisoner, was a chaplain. And the German, when he was made prisoner, said, "Do you want to go back home because you're a chaplain? You can, you're a pastor." And he said, "No, I'll go with my other soldiers, friends." And so he went to a concentration camp in Poland, was bombed, and suffered many things. And then from there in 1946 went to Africa, and he's a great, great man of faith. So 2 revivals that shook what is now Burkina Faso.
Wow.
Incredible miracles, and he built up my faith. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Uh-huh.
When you hear the word successful, who's the first person you think of, and why?
It's not a person, it's a word, it's family. To me, success is when your family is following God and happy living together. Sorry,
That's cool.
it's not a name.
No, that's good. No, that's really good. What do you do for self-care, to rest, to recharge?
I take my camera and go and shoot at, I do street photography. That's how I relax, and I feel Christ being with me when I do photography. That's how I relax the best.
That's cool.
And I tend to come to Holy Smokes on Friday.
Absolutely. What's the best type of cheese?
French cheese, indeed.
Like what kind of cheese?
Oh, a cheese you wouldn't like to try. It's called Munster, not a monster. Munster. It's a extremely, extremely strong cheese.
Really?
Yeah, my wife forbid me to put it in the fridge. I had to put it on the window outside of the house. But it's an extremely strong one. It's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
But I grew up on strong cheese. I'm from Burgundy, so
Yeah.
it's an amazing cheese. Most of the people would think it stinks too much to be eaten,
Yeah.
but you have to separate your nose and your palate. But the smell is strong, but the taste is just mind-blowing.
Interesting. That sounds cool. All right, final 3 questions.
Okay.
What does Holy Smokes mean to you, and how has it contributed to your spiritual journey?
So first thing that comes to my mind, amazing group of guys. Vulnerability, and a place where when I had a week with an intensive and it was tough, rough, and we dealt with difficult things, what I love the most, it's on Friday. When I'm done with the intensive, I take my car, I run to my Holy Smokes group in Castle Rock,
Yes.
and I can be myself, and I can be vulnerable, and I can just enjoy a cigar, a scotch, and listen and be casual, and really empty myself there, and it's fantastic. It's medicine. It's the best medicine ever that I've found so far.
If you were to have a Holy Smoke with any 3 people throughout history, living or
Okay.
deceased, who would they be? Can't name Jesus.
So I would use, the first name would be McGilvery.
Who?
McGilvery.
Okay.
You might not know who he is, but he's an ancestor of Megan Hardre.
Okay.
He was the first missionary who went to northern Thailand and Laos, who brought the gospel to those people there. Tremendous man of God. I don't know if he was smoking cigars, but I wouldn't mind have a long conversation with him.
Meg also had
She has a portrait of him.
Yeah, and she also named him as one of her.
Is that
3.
right?
Yes.
Second person might be Rachel's grandfather. For sure, I know he never smoked tobacco, but I would totally enjoy smoking one with him and just to have one more chance to listen to his amazing stories about the revivals and stuff.
That's cool.
And the last one would be definitely Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you want to smoke a cigar with this guy and listen to him.
Last question.
Okay,
If we're to meet 1 year from today,
okay,
and I got a bottle of the best Burgundy,
okay.
what are we celebrating?
We're celebrating growth, we are in the process of trying to open a French pastry and bakery here in Castle Rock or Parker. So we would celebrate the opening of that place that would be part of our ministry. It would be a way to raise funds also for the ministry.
Really?
So we would definitely celebrate that with a croissant, or that goes with champagne or anything you want for that. We would celebrate growth in ministry, churches being stronger. We work with a church in Paris that is fast growing. It's called MLK Church, Martin Luther King Church.
Yeah.
And we are very much involved in that church. So we're supposed to have a grand opening of a new building. And because of the COVID, it couldn't be open last year. So we hope we could celebrate this grand opening and see the growth of the gospel in French-speaking countries.
Any ETA on when that pastry shop, bakery?
No, I wish 2021 would be, we'd see this opening taking place. We were almost there, but then COVID hit us and it was not possible anymore.
Well, you know for a fact that there are going to be a boatload of Holy Smokers that are going to come for that opening day, because
That's why I'm bringing bread and croissants and
nice warm croissant is
Yes.
it's so good.
heaven on earth.
Oh my goodness. Eric Dufour, thank you for being on the Holy Smokes podcast, my man.
Thank you for inviting me, Steve. I appreciate that. Love you guys.
Before you leave,
Yes.
I want you to say in French, welcome to Holy Smokes.
Bienvenue à Holy Smokes.